What is up, Fanatics? It's 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means another episode of Home Theater Fanatics Live. Tonight is episode 135. That's right, 135. And we have a great episode for you. Today, we've got Chuck back of Trinnov Audio. That's right, that Trinnov, the one, the only, the big T. And we're going to talk all about immersive 3D audio, Atmos, and some really cool things that are happening with the product line that I think everybody's going to be excited about, because I was extremely excited about it. It's super cool. But anyway, we'll get to that. But first, Chuck, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks, Giles. I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Glad to be here with everybody.
Yeah. And you know, we're super, super happy to have you with us. Maybe we can kick off the show with just letting everybody know who you are, and then we'll get into a little bit about what Trinnov does for those that might not be familiar.
I'm you could characterize me as a lifer in the audio business, 40 plus years. Started in college selling hi-fi while I was a college student, but most of my career was with M&K Sound. I was the executive vice president, essentially was the one who ran the company day to day when Ken Kreisel was off in his laboratory being the mad scientist designing loudspeakers.
Sure.
And that was a great run. Unfortunately, the company did close. It actually outgrew itself. And after I left, I became a partner in a company that I'm still working with, separate from Trinnov, called Procella Audio. We make very high performance European manufactured loudspeakers for serious home theaters.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be able to join the Trinnov team very early in the Trinnov expansion into the United States. I worked for the distributor that originally sold Trinnov. And then when Trinnov took over the distribution directly and set up a U.S. company, I was able to move over and become one of the managing directors.
I would say that was an excellent move.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. At this point in my career, I'm getting to play with expensive toys, and it's just what I want to be doing.
You know, just a comment. It seems like there was or have been a lot of folks that, you know, got their start or worked with Ken and M&K, you know, back in the day. I mean, I've had a number of guests on that say, yeah, I did this with those guys back then. It's interesting how, you know, the things kind of bloomed out from there, and you know, where everybody kind of left and went and landed and that kind of thing.
Exactly. It traces back to the Jonas Miller hi-fi story. Jonas Miller was really everyone's mentor. And he was one of the grand old men of audio, one of the very first true high-end dealers in the US.
Awesome.
And shop in Beverly Hills. And so we all came through that portal and spread through the industry.
Right on. And so today you find yourself at Trinnov, and let's talk a little bit. What does Trinnov do? And you know, I know what you do, and it's really cool because it takes a product that everyone that has a home theater has a version of, but it has taken it and just moved it up, you know, 8 different levels to you know, I think a level that most people had not anticipated when you guys launched way back in the day. So let's talk a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'd like to trace it back to the launch of the company, even before the launch of the company, which has a lot to do with the advancements that Trinnov has made. The 3 founding partners were college students. They were taking advanced studies in acoustics, and their interest was a hobby for listening to music, but they were more serious. They really are scientists. They wanted to advance audio technology. And this is around the year 2000. At that time, we had 24-bit 96 kilohertz resolution coming, and that was something that could be improved slightly, but not significantly. So they decided to pursue research into spatial audio. They recognized that the spatial aspect of audio was not really being recognized and addressed in research and in products. So they started doing research into 3D audio back over 20 years ago. And they were building rooms with multiple speakers that look very much like a DTS laboratory does today, and finding how to approach, capture, and reproduce spatial audio, 3D audio, immersive audio. That led into the recognition that it was one thing to put a lot of speakers in a room. It's another thing to get a coherent sound field where it replicates what we hear in real life. And that led to the creation of the optimizer technology, which is the speaker in room correction, which corrects the impulse response of all the speakers, corrects for phase, and in addition to the normal kinds of amplitude response corrections that room systems fix. So we're looking at impulse response, we're looking at phase, we're looking at levels, and they found that when that was corrected, the coherent sound field, basically a half hemisphere of sound, was achievable. And that led into the creation of their first products, which were optimizers sold into recording studios.
Right. And so I think that's interesting because I think most people on kind of my side of the world viewing Trinnov see you guys as kind of a home theater company, but really you guys do a lot more than just the 16 and the 32, right?
Right. There's actually three divisions. So three different sales organizations within the company. There's the high end, which is the home theater products, and we also have hi-fi products. And then there is the cinema division, which is starting to come back to life. We actually make commercial cinema processors. That business, unfortunately, hasn't been very active for the last couple of years. For obvious reasons, but the real launch of the company commercially was selling to pro. And in that category, it's recording studios and post-production for cinema. And that is a huge category, and it's been growing enormously. It's been very successful over the last year.
That's awesome. So let's shift gears just a little bit. I think people kind of understand now, the breadth of the portfolio, but this is Home Theater Fanatics. So, I like to talk about the products that people can purchase and have in their homes. That would really be the Altitude 16 and Altitude 32. So specifically, what are those products for, and what kind of makes them stand apart?
Well, they're immersive audio processors. The Altitude 16 is the entry point. It is a 16-channel processor, limited to 16 channels, whereas the Altitude 32, which is the flagship, comes in 4 versions. There's an 8-channel version, 16-channel, 24-channel, and 32-channel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also an additional box that can be added to the 32-channel device that'll take it all the way up to 48 channels. And up to 64 outputs.
And these are, so 48, this is 48 discrete channels of processed audio, right?
Well, the limitation in discrete rendering would be the Atmos or DTSX format. And Atmos is 34 channels for the home, and DTS is 30 plus 2.
I'm just trying to think, in my room, how many feet would I have between speakers?
Right. It's a continuous wall. It's wall of sound.
Oh, but you could take that maximum though, and then map out, if you had, the maximum number of outputs, you could map those different channels that meet the spec to all your speakers. So you could light them all up if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens in those really high channel count systems is the use of 2-way, 3-way biamp or tri-amplified loudspeakers, 6 subwoofers, 8 subwoofers.
Oh, you're talking my language now.
Yeah, large numbers of output channels. So it's not necessarily, once you get past a certain point, it's not about the discrete rendering. We've hit the maximum. Then we're going to go into higher performance systems with multi-amplification and multiple subwoofers.
Right on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the new stuff then. And you guys just made an announcement. This was not very long ago at all, about something that I didn't expect at all, because it's kind of it's not something that you see a manufacturer do very often to an existing product that almost reinvents it from my point of view anyway. But what did you do for the 16 and the 32 that?
Yeah, it is really exciting. And the response has been tremendous. We're calling it the +4 upgrade, and it is a software upgrade that will be available in October, probably around the midpoint of October. And it will add 4 additional output channels and decoding channels to both the Altitude 16 and any version of the Altitude 32.
Wow.
And because the Trinnov processors are not based around the mass market produced chipsets that other manufacturers use for their Dolby and DTS processing, we're built around an Intel multi-core processor
Mhm.
running our own Linux operating system and our own custom software. So we can do this by upgrading the software. And it will be a free upgrade available to any Altitude owner going back to serial number 1. And that will get them completely up to date. This will be implemented in 2 different ways, depending on the processor. The Altitude 16 has only analog outputs. And so one of our engineers, in a brilliant inspiration, came up with the idea of using the Toslink output, the optical output of the Altitude 16, to feed an ADAT format audio signal into an external DAC, internal digital analog converter.
Right.
The ADAT format is used in recording studios, very often in home studios, to carry multiple channels of audio in this specific format. The typical application is 8 channels at 48 kilohertz, but we are using 4 channels, which means we can go to 96 kilohertz. So those outputs are going to be 24-bit 96K 4 channels. And in order to take advantage of this, the Altitude owner will have to purchase an external ADAT box. And they're made by pro audio companies, Focusrite, PreSonus, Aphex, Tascam, companies like that. The entry-level price is about $500, and then you can go up from there to as much as you want to spend, I suppose. And we will be issuing a list of compatible devices for people who are interested
if you
in
think
upgrading.
about it, so at the entry level with a 16, you're effectively giving people a $500 upgrade just because you need the external hardware to increase their channel count by 25%.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's going to enable them to do a 9.1.6
That's
Atmos
what I was going to get to,
implementation.
right?
Yeah, with 4 subwoofers.
Exactly.
And that is kind of a sweet spot for systems.
That is an extremely huge sweet spot for systems. I think most of the the kind of the pre-canned chipsets that you mentioned before, they roll up to about 16 channels, right? And there's a limitation there, because if you want to go with what I would consider the full home theater experience that you see kind of in the top end mid-range theaters, right? Just kind of like the kind of people like me, right? Not a multi-million dollar home theater, but people will do 9-bed channels, 6 channels in the air, but they want to have 4 subs. And when you have 20 channels, that'll get you up to 19, and then you can even do the extra sub if you want. And there's enough horsepower in the CPU to manage all of that.
To do that. And all of the correction, all of the measurements, all of the optimization will be done in the Altitude.
Right on. Okay, so that's cool. But in the 32, you don't even need an add-on. It's just software switch.
You will need an external DAC, but it's a more conventional DAC. The Altitude 32 has digital outputs. And with the AES EBU digital outputs, we can bring 4 channels out to go to any high-end DAC. Any high-performance DAC will have AES EBU inputs. And so that's simpler.
Travis says that his Altitude 16 shipped today and will be there on Monday.
Congratulations. That's
Welcome
great.
to the family, Travis. That's awesome. Now, to go along with the 4 additional channels, you guys have also announced the inclusion of IMAX Enhanced in your gear. So what does that really mean for people?
IMAX Enhanced is kind of a proprietary software, meaning content and playback system. So you will be able to, there are a few today, but you will be able to purchase Blu-ray discs that have IMAX enhanced content. and IMAX enhanced content will also be available on streaming services.
Okay.
There's been talk, but nothing formal about a major streaming service offering IMAX enhanced at some point in the future, probably in November, but that hasn't been revealed in detail yet. Basically, IMAX enhanced is enhancement of the image with some proprietary noise reduction systems to make the larger screen playback clearer and less grainy and less noisy. There is a feature for setting the aspect ratio automatically for a film. So that will be encoded on the disc, and in playback, the display or the projector will automatically change the aspect ratios. It's HDR10, so there's high dynamic range, of course. The sound is DTS. The goal is to have uncompressed sound, so it's not squished in a sense for home theater playback. So you get the full IMAX sound experience. It's basically a 7.2.4 approach. Obviously, you can use more speakers and it will work better, particularly in an altitude. In an altitude, you'll be able to go up to the full channel count of the processor. But one significant thing to consider is there's no base management in the system. The channels are set up as full range, or rather, there's no LFE. So the base management becomes critical.
Oh,
So
right. There's no LFE in that at all. Interesting.
Right. So it's full range, and so proper configuration of base management will be necessary unless you happen to have a lot of very large full range speakers.
Well, I was going to say, all I heard there was I need to buy a subwoofer for each channel, especially for the Atmos channels.
So maybe not so practical.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they wouldn't be Atmos channels in this, but for the heights, how do I mount subwoofers on my ceiling?
Yeah, it's done.
I know it, and it's awesome. It is very cool.
This even brings back memories of the very early days of working with DTS when there was DTS music music mixing, and DTS folks are rather insistent that people use full range speakers and not redirect bass to subwoofers. So that's something that's in the DTS DNA that apparently is still there today.
Well, it's very interesting. So I visited a number of recording studios, or really mixing studios in California, as well as a location called Icons, which is a screening facility used by motion picture houses and people like Netflix and that kind of stuff. And, I talked to the engineers there, and I said, well, what's your philosophy around speakers and that kind of thing? And their goal is to run each channel as full range as is possible. Right. So, they don't subscribe to the idea of, let's cross everything over at 80 Hertz, kind of the standard home theater kind of thing. And then use base management to deal with that. They want to full range everything as much as possible. And then LFE channel obviously will go out to the subs. But that, that was a kind of an eye opener for me. This was many years ago, because I had kind of been brought up in just the, very small home theater kind of setting and group and people that I spoke to, and I didn't have that larger vision. But when I talked to them, they were like, "Oh no, that's not how we do it." I was like, "What?" So
it's also how it's done in cinema. In commercial cinema, all the screen speakers are full range, and by cinema definition, that's extension to 40 Hertz.
Right.
And then the surrounds generally are smaller and don't extend as deep. But the LFE is the only signal in commercial cinema that's going to the subwoofers.
Right. I think everyone has something to aspire to now in their system. I think they all need at least the altitude 16, right?
Yes.
And then full range across. And if you need to, just buy subs to extend out your
subwoofers are fine. Yeah, we've got extremely flexible base management, so we can manage any number of subwoofers.
Right, and I think that's really part of the magic, because that's the difficult frequency range to manage. The stuff that's going out to your subs. So, my hats off to you guys for that, because it really is outstanding.
Great.
All right, so let's also shift gears a little bit more now, and this goes back to that comment that I threw up before. Where Travis said that he was going to be receiving his altitude 16, and we were actually chatting about this a little bit earlier today, And I think one of the misconceptions that people have about Trinnov is that it is really only a product that can be bought uh, in conjunction with pro installation services, right? Maybe a custom installer
Mhm.
kind of thing, or you have to go out and buy this at some shop and you have to pay them to install it. But that's not true at all, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The working with a calibrator is always recommended. That will achieve um, the best possible results. But in reality, that is an expensive proposition. And for the aspiring altitude owner, the message that I want to get clear is that calibrating an altitude is a very straightforward process. It is not terribly time consuming unless you want to experiment, which is something the hobbyist can do. But
Mhm.
uh, setting up the microphone, taking a measurement is something that can be done in minutes. And we make that easy for the first time user because we have a wizard on board the altitude. And that wizard walks that first time setup, walks that first time user through the setup process, everything from connecting the microphone, placing the microphone, and measuring the speakers, and then doing the adjustments. So that is something that is commonly done. We have a lot of the hobbyist types, the enthusiasts tend to do that on their own, whereas the people who are buying the 500,000 and up home theaters
The people that
who
just
are,
sign the checks.
yeah, they shine the check and
Yeah.
it just comes, they want someone to come in and dial it in for them, and they're just going to come in and push buttons and watch movies. But for those who are really into it and want to take advantage of the fine tuning capability, getting started is very straightforward. And we're happy to help you with that. The reality is that every Trinnov processor that is connected to a network that gets to the internet calls back to our server in Paris. And through that server and our intranet, I and the support team and John Heron in Connecticut can connect to that machine remotely and see all of the functions and have all of the controls over that machine. So if someone is doing an initial setup and they want some assistance, we can log in alongside them and step them through the calibration. And
That
that
is
is something
outstanding.
we're happy to do. That's part of the benefit of owning a Trinnov.
Yeah, I dare anybody to try and find any of the mass market kind of brands that will offer to help with with the setup and the calibration. It's just not going to happen. So my take home message here then is, if you're a home theater enthusiast and you feel comfortable, going to Best Buy and buying an AVR and then using any of the setup tools that they have, when they decide to move to the next level and move to like a 16, altitude 16, the process for them is going to be no more difficult than what they've experienced in the past. If they can be successful with kind of a more entry level product, then they will be able to be just as successful with the Trinnov gear.
Yeah, and they'll achieve a higher level of performance, obviously,
Right.
because that calibration will be very good to excellent. Uh, if they want to go beyond that, then there is the option to bring someone in to spend 2 or 3 days uh, calibrating, moving subwoofers, finding optimum locations. But again, that enthusiast is going to have experience over time, and if that enthusiast owns a microphone, he'll be able to take additional calibrations in the future and make additional adjustments. And in fact, taking additional measurements isn't necessarily indicated. Once a good measurement is taken, all of the captured information is stored on the altitude itself. And we have 29 presets available so that user can make fine adjustments or large adjustments to things like target curves and speaker levels and the other deeper tools that we have, save the change in a new preset, and then have something to compare to the previous settings to see if they're making an improvement or not, and incrementally work their way to better sound.
That's cool. So I think people should get, 3 or 4 buddies going together. Everybody get your own altitude 16, then buy one of the cool Trinnov microphones and everybody knows the one I'm talking about because it's the only one that looks like it. Here it comes.
Here it is. Here's the
that one, the really, really cool
let me get
microphone.
this.
And then they could just share it
4
around.
elements. Yeah.
Take a measurement and then tweak to your heart's content. That's cool. All right. So we're going to move on now to segment 2 of the show. And let me see if I can get some music here. All right. So now you know all about Trinnov, but there's a burning question. And we always phrase this question as the tech topic of the week. And today's tech topic of the week is, what is Dolby Atmos music? How can you get it? And why would you even want it in the first place? And we have the expert on everything multi-channel and spatial audio with us, Chuck Back of Trinnov. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks again.
To section 2 of the show.
Indeed, yes.
So that's the question. This whole Dolby Atmos music thing, what's up with that? And why does anybody care about it?
Well, I'm going to start talking about immersive music and then segue into Atmos music as a lead-in, because there's really 2 aspects to the to music playback on a good home theater system like one that's using Trinnov Altitude. In the Altitude and in other processors, there are what we call up mixers. These are settings that can be used for stereo or 5.1 or 7.1 content that extract information and send that extracted information to all the channels in the system. So if we just have a 5.1, say we have a 5.1 concert recording to talk about music, using an up mixer is going to send information to the high channels and create a more immersive experience. The Trinnov processors are all Roon endpoints, which is awesome, by the way. It's outstanding. Yeah, Roon is very popular. A lot of Trinnov owners have adopted Roon after learning about it. Just very briefly, it's an extremely high audio quality transmission. It can be used for streaming music from Tidal. It can be also used for playback of music that you have stored on a hard drive in your system. Roon is not an immersive format. It's just stereo, and you can do 5.1 and 7.1. But what we have found is that even the hardcore stereo audiophiles who say that I'm a 2-channel stereo music fanatic, that's all I listen to. 2-channel for life. Yeah. They find out when they get an Altitude and use an up mixer, and I'm going to speak about a specific up mixer, the Oro 3D. They find that the improvement in the listening experience and the life-like nature of the sound, the natural concert sound, is so compelling that they're using the up mixer for listening to everything now. And the Oro up mixer comes from Oro 3D. That format was born from Galaxy Studios in Belgium. Wilfred van Balen is the owner and founder of the studio, and he's the creator of the format. Because it's from a music background, it's a much better upmixing format for listening to music. Right. And therefore, it sounds better for music than the Dolby Atmos upmixer, which is called Dolby Surround, or the DTS-X Neural X upmixer, which are very good for movies, but are not as good for music. So that's the first, I think the first entry point to immersive music is just using the upmixers and discovering what can be done with existing material. But the thing that I'm really excited about and really encouraged is the rapid and widespread adoption of Dolby Atmos music. Atmos music is music mixed in the Atmos format for playback on an Atmos speaker system. And it's going to use whatever combination of speakers you have. Typically, these are mixed in 7.1.4 or 9.1.6 systems. And as with music recordings in stereo, they run the gamut of very simple presentations where it might sound like you're live in a room with musicians, or even a solo musician, to crazy sound bouncing all over the room using every speaker, things moving sideways, up and down, and lots of subwoofer activity, in order to create an artistic experience that the musicians and the producers want to create. I would say that the live recordings are probably the ones that benefit the most, but the things that are some of the newer recordings are getting very the ones that are being released now are getting very ambitious. Probably the most notorious one is the new Yellow album called
Oh, yeah.
Point,
Yeah.
which is just crazy. There's just sound everywhere and moving around all the time.
So to get started then in Atmos music, what's the equipment that's necessary for that?
So, in addition to obviously having a receiver or a separate processor that decodes Atmos, you'll need a device that can stream it. So, typically, this is in the higher end systems. It's going to be an Apple TV 4K, either the second generation or the latest one that has come out recently. The NVIDIA Shield can also be used, and those are the primary ones that we're finding in the higher end theaters.
Right, and those are the two sources that I always recommend for people if they want to get into streaming. Those are the two: NVIDIA Shield, Apple TV 4K, new one. Absolutely, the right choices. Yeah,
And there are literally thousands of cuts available today that can be streamed.
that's awesome.
So it is to my take, it's not really being promoted as aggressively as it should be, and I don't think it's as widely understood, and that's why I think it's really important to talk about.
Awesome. Well, look for a video for me in the not too distant future where I go over Atmos music, and I will help spread the word because you've got me super excited about the technology, and I've honestly not used it very much, and I've got access to all the tools, so why not, right?
Exactly, and I have some recommendations for titles, but browsing the either the title app on the Apple TV or the Apple Music listings. Just search for Atmos.
Right on. And so, and are those the two streaming sources outside of the hardware that you would recommend? So Tidal and Apple Music?
Yes. Yep. Those are.
Does anybody else do it? Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head.
No, well, there is some limited with Amazon Music, but I'm not as familiar with it, and I'm not sure that it's playable right now for a high end system.
Right.
That's why I gravitate towards the NVIDIA and the Apple TV.
Awesome. Great. Well, everyone, you heard it here. Atmos music, immersive music, up mixers. These are all cool things that I bet everyone here has access to already and probably, or maybe not, has looked into, because I think at this point some type of processor or AVR with Atmos capability is pretty ubiquitous for this crowd, and more people than not have an NVIDIA Shield or an Apple TV. So give it a shot. You've got access. Might as well give it a ring and see what happens.
Yep.
Cool.
It's a new world of creativity.
Awesome. So Chuck, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. Trinnov is one of my absolute favorite technologies in the whole home theater realm. It is the center of the universe for your system. Everything feeds into it and everything feeds out of it, and it creates the magic that binds it all together. So, I would, recommend everyone take a look at your products if they haven't done so yet. And if they're thinking about upgrading or starting their new theater and they can swing a 16, man, what a right way to get things started. I mean, it's really good. But thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And well, I encourage anyone with any questions to reach out. They can contact me through the website.
Awesome. Yeah. And down in the notes, I'll make sure there are plenty of links so everybody can find your brand, contact information, and if they're interested, who to talk to, and, step that journey forward with Trinnov.
Great.
All right, Chuck,
Thanks,
take care.
everyone.
Thank you again.
All right. Cheers.
All right. That means it's time for section 3 of the show. All right. So I'm not going to read the little intro. because we have a special guest tonight, and he's been on my show once before, I think, something like that. Well, this is going to be number 2, and it's the one, the only, the spare change, but he's not very spare because he is required.
He's
Hey,
been on
man,
he's been
the
on 0
cliche.
times before.
Zero. No. Oh, I was on your show one time.
You're on my show, yeah.
I was on your show. See, I just assumed that, it's my show. Your show is my show. Welcome.
That's true.
Thank you so much for coming on to Content Corner.
What's up, man? Has a nice show. I see you have everything all like sectioned off, professionally done.
Oh, I know.
Impressed.
I have like the scripts and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's legit in here.
Very impressed.
And
Question is, when are you getting your Altitude 16?
I'm working hard, man. I'm earning money every week, and we'll see when my wife lets me flip the switch on that. But when I do, I'll make sure everybody in the whole world knows. And it's kind of interesting, the conversation that we just had around how people can set this up themselves. I think that's a very interesting conversation around the Trinnov product line, because
super easy.
Some people think that it's not something that they could ever get into. It would be out of their reach. It would be unrealistic. I guarantee them, if I can do it, they can do it, right?
Super easy.
And you run Trinnov at home yourself, right?
Yes, I do run a Trinnov at home. Just for you, just so you guys know that are in the chat, they gave it to me for free. I got the big boy. It's like 35 grand. They were just like, Shane, I'm just gonna give it to you for free because I'm a Trinnov.
That's how you roll.
I'm just kidding.
I
bought it.
One thing that I think is really awesome, and one use case for your Altitude that I really, really like, is the piece of software, which is the Atmos Visualizer.
Yes. The Atmos Visualizer.
That thing is outstanding. And I've tried to find a way to emulate that without that tool, and I have failed so far. Because that tool is outstanding. And when you want to look and see what's going on in some piece of content that you're watching, you can see all the objects move around. And I have a lot of people always say, "Oh, I watched this movie and it didn't have any Atmos at all."
Yeah.
And I can call BS on that anecdotally, but I don't have a way to show that. But you do with that tool, which is outstanding.
Yeah, I think I had somebody that made a video when I reviewed a couple movies, and I was just like, hey man, this is like a 10 for audio. It's like one of the best mixes I've heard. And then I guess they made a video saying like there's nothing in these Atmos mixes because I don't hear it on my Denon 4000 or whatever it was. And then luckily enough, they came out with this update. But I was like, and I watched all the movies that I gave 10s to, and I was like, just so you guys know, it actually is a 10. And I'm actually hearing these effects in these upper channels and side channels. So I mean, I think once you get to a certain level in your AV gear, I'm not trying to knock mid-range gear or anything like that, but I don't think that type of stuff can quite decode sound as good as, like, say, some upper tier stuff. So if you're like mid-range type of guy, you might have a hard time hearing the stuff that's coming in the high channels or in the surround channels. I think once you get upper tier stuff, maybe better amplification, more capable decoding chips or whatever's in your AVR, that you're going to hear the stuff better calibration software as well is going to help you get the better effects. So when I hear people saying that Atmos is gimmicky, it sounds like crap. I haven't had mid-range gear for a while, so I'm sorry. but there's definitely the stuff that you think sounds like crap most likely really sounds really good. You're just kind of missing out on it.
Yeah. And, Trinnov is uniquely situated in the market because, they run their own code set on top of Linux. So they're not restricted by any piece of silicon, right? So they haven't gone out and bought a chipset from someone. They run their own code with their own optimization that they have full access to and can do anything they want to with their fleet of programmers. So if anybody was going to be able to do it right, it would be these guys.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And plus, the visual, sometimes I don't even find myself watching the movie. I'll be looking at my iPad screen at the visualizer.
I'm so jealous, dude.
It's pretty distracting.
I can't help it. I'm turning green with envy over here. And it's not often I say that, you have a great setup and I'm all like, oh, he's got his Macintosh and he's got and those things are all cool, right? But for me, the one piece that I look at and I say that is a differentiator is the processor. I mean, that's
it's like when you spend them, I know it's tough to come up with the funds at first, but if you think as in the long run, the past like maybe 4 or 5 years that I've owned stuff, I've always bought like flagship AVRs, which is like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, sometimes $6,000.
I know it's kind of ridiculous, right?
And you always upgrade. If there's a newer one, you're always going to
get
upgrade.
off of that freaking treadmill of upgrading.
You figure you bought 2 flagship AVRs for like $6,000 a pop. I mean, you're only a couple grand away, maybe $2,000 away or $3,000 away from an actual 16,
right? Yeah.
Whereas if you would have bought it back in 2015 or 2016, I mean, it's already kind of paid for itself. You saved yourself maybe 2-3 generations of AVRs from then till now, and you're still getting more upgrades. You're getting extra 4 channels if you bought that piece, from 2016.
Yeah, even like you said, serial number 0. They all get it.
Yeah, dude, totally worth. I wish I could be like totally worth it, but I mean, it's tough for everybody's budget. But if you have the means and you can save, you can save.
It's worth it.
It's tough to save up sometimes. That's tough to save $16,000, $18,000.
I think most of the people watching this show, they are the target market of it's worth it.
Right? I hope so.
Right on.
I mean, I think this is probably like their busiest year they've had as far as, from what I've heard. And it's funny because during the pandemic, it seems like everybody's buying everything from like high-end speakers, AVRs, and cars. I bought a car today, and they were just like, "This is our best." Yeah, they're like, "This is our best year for sales." I was like, "How is that?"
I mean, possible? I know you looked for that Yugo for years to find that one that was still in pristine condition.
It's probably a collector's item. Yeah.
Oh, that would be. How many are left that haven't been rolled over?
Yeah, right.
But a couple of things. Hi-Fi Haven says he's got mid-range. He gets plenty of Atmos. That's good. I think it's probably a testament to your skill of setup. Hi-Fi Haven is pretty good with stuff. He's digging my shirt. Mike says maybe because it's very dark. this is the mic aesthetic. I should have made it tighter though. I don't know why I should make it tighter, but I feel like I should make it tighter. Brolic Media is up in the house. All right, this guy right here, he is continually working on me with all this cool technology, and I think I'm going to be sold on Control 4 here pretty soon. So
yeah, buddy.
Oh man, I don't know.
You got to come up with something. Your Harmony Elite's kind of dead already.
Oh, I know, and I'm all Harmony all the time because that was the you can kind of do it yourself tool as opposed to the you can't do it yourself tool. Sofa Baton's coming out with their new one, but I don't know.
I've heard
I'm going to buy one and probably make a video about it, but I'm not sold yet.
I've heard they're a little trashy. That's why I've turned them down several times.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it, but I mean they kicked out like one of their old models to me a long time ago, and it was just a straight normal kind of universal remote. It didn't have all the cool stuff, but we'll see if they can make it or not. I don't know. He says, "Do it. Control 4 will open your eyelids at the touch of a button." Yeah, that's cool. Well, let's talk about content, which is what we're here to talk about. And we've got about 10 minutes left here, maybe 15 to churn through some of this stuff. And there's at least one thing that I want to talk about, and that's Foundation.
Yeah, so episode 1 today.
Yeah, and that's a brand new show out on Apple TV, and this is a television adaptation of the Isaac Asimov Foundation series, and I think it's got me. So I actually watched the first episode with my wife and both of my kids, and my kids are a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old boy, and so my boys were out. They're all like, "Dude, this sucks. I'm out. I can't stand it. It's not good. It's super slow." And my wife was like, "It's pretty good. I'll give the second episode a chance." And I was like, "Yes, Isaac Asimov. Look at the picture. This thing's awesome. Look at the spaceships. Oh, it's really cool." So I don't know. What did you think about it?
Well, I didn't know what was going on for probably like first 30 minutes until they actually gave you like what the whole show was about.
Yeah.
Because it was just like Gail came to this planet and she was like from a poor planet. And then Harry something, I don't know.
Harry Seldon.
Harry Seldon, yeah. Was it a book or something like that?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that what
So
it's based
Isaac
on?
Asimov wrote the Foundation. Well, I think I'm not sure how many are in the series. I know there are at least 3, but this was written a very long time ago,
Yeah.
and I just remember it. I can't remember all the plot anymore. I read it way back in the day, but I just remember I thought the name Harry Seldon was really stupid.
Yeah, I thought it was very not space like. I was like,
Yes,
Harry
not
Seldon?
space like at all. And Gale is spelled like Gaal or something. So that he gave them all kind of weird spellings, but
Yeah.
it just sounds like Gale, like a normal kind of name.
Yeah. It's very kind of like average. Like my neighbor's name was Gail or something. I was like, all right, that's cool. It's very unlike Star Wars esque. When I figured space, I'm thinking like Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica. And then they talk about the Empire and then the Imperial. I was like, man, it's very Star Wars esque. But
But this
visually,
came way before Star Wars, though.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I guess George Lucas stole it then. So
maybe so. But
possibly.
but you're right that this TV show is definitely going to be space opera.
Yeah, and it's a definitely a high budget show because it looked like a legit like big budget type of television show, almost like cinema quality as far as visuals.
Oh, it looks good.
And yeah,
I'm a little, I guess, on the sound side, a little disappointed in the low end.
yeah, I thought so too. I mean, the effects and all that stuff, especially when they're on the planet, I got a lot of ambiance, like the water and the crickets and stuff like that. So really give you like a big sense of space. But then some of the big action stuff, like the bass was just like, I don't know what's going on lately, but everything I've been watching lately, from like movies to shows, just been lacking bass. So I'm constantly going back to putting in like Midway or like some big action flick just to make sure my subs sound the way I
did the
know they
same
sound.
thing. I did the same
Yeah.
thing. And what's kind of funny is, I had a friend of mine over the other day, and we were listening to some demo content, right? And I pulled up John Wick 3 and the assault on the whatever the name of the hotel was, which is one of the little presets in Kaleidoscape. And we watched that and listened to it, and it's got a lot of bass. I mean, it really thumps. It's got a lot of chest thump in it. And I was like, I wonder how old school stuff will compare. So I pulled out the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
And oh man, the sound in the Matrix is just horrible, just compared to
The first one.
Oh, so bad.
I think the third one was probably the best sounding one, if I recall correctly. I
Oh,
think
I wouldn't doubt it. I'm sure as they got newer, they sounded better. But this was the first one, and I played the scene where they come into, I don't know what it is, a bank or something, I forget, and it's Neo and then the lady, I can't think of her name, Trinity, right? And then he shows all the
You're
guns, and
losing
the
your
guys are all like,
movie.
oh.
You're losing your movie cred here, Giles.
I know. I'm old though. It happens. The older you get, you lose your hair. Then the memory starts to go, and all that. So you guys just have to bear with me. I'm doing my best.
Speaking of your look, I've been binging The Sopranos because I've never seen the show before.
I've never watched it either. Never a single episode.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to the movie that's coming out this Friday, I think, that I binge watched all of it. I'm like the last season right now, and I'm looking at you, and I'm like, dude,
do I look like a Don?
Dude looks like a small Tony Soprano with glasses.
Let me see. I'm gonna take you out, man. I can't do
that. You don't sound anything like that. You don't sound anything like that.
Sorry to everyone with an Italian accent because I just ruined it for everybody. But yeah, no, I mean.
There you go, dude. How do you, if you think he looks a little bit like a Tony Soprano,
just a little bit, I could be a boss.
A little bit friendlier face, then you leave a comment down below if Giles looks like Tony Soprano.
I don't know why this makes me think of this, but I started a TikTok, and I am not the demographic for TikToks.
Did you really? Okay. Right? How you making out on that?
Oh, it's horrible. It's really bad. If you thought my YouTube channel response was bad, TikTok's
wait, are you dancing?
No, but I did one. So they have this meme kind of thing where this song plays in the background. You have your eyes closed, and then you open your eyes, and they use a filter to give you like these blue crazy eyes. And they're doing it for infants and stuff because it looks really weird. But I put one of those up. And so if you guys want to see me with the crazy blue eyes, I recommend everyone go to my TikTok at Home Theater Fanatics. And
my wife is always trying to get me on her TikTok. She's like, there's always these things. I don't know where the voice comes from because I don't have TikTok, but it's always like My husband says I did this and I did that.
Yeah. I was some
was
kind of
like-
voiceover thing.
I was like, is it preset voices or?
Yeah, I think there's an app where you type in the words and then they just read it for you, and you can put it on as a. But these folks like get crazy with the editing, and I'm not sure what they're editing in. If they're doing it on their phone, that's pretty.
Yeah,
pretty
dude, I don't know. Yes,
Yeah,
they'll do
pretty
the change of clothes thing or something like that, and they'll be dressed in sweatpants, and all of a sudden they're like in a stripper outfit. I'm like,
I know.
okay,
And then I need to do
cool.
something with that dance where they go ding, 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 and they go bing, 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 bing. You know what I'm talking about? I just lost everybody. Sorry. That's a very popular meme right now where everybody dances to the same kind of thing and they bang their hands like this. We have a question. Hi, Shayna Gile. I'm a Gile now.
Gile. I'll call you Gile from now on. There's only one of you here, so it makes sense.
I know that nobody cares enough to like, what's his name really?
Where's your twin?
Could you explain or express the Trinnov DTS-X Pro? Is that the more immersive in RO 3D? So DTS-X Pro is just another immersive sound format like Atmos is, right? And the motion picture houses, when they edit and create the audio mix, they can mix it in DTS-X, they can mix it in Atmos, and those are the two that you typically see. Is it more immersive than RO 3D? It's different than RO 3D. RO 3D is almost never used in American cinema, and it's mostly used as an UC mixer for music. So what do you think?
So I believe DTS-X was locked at 11 channels.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm pretty 90% sure that's true. I think it was originally locked at like 11 channels on like your AVR processors or whatever. And then DTS-X Pro, I do believe that you can upmix it to X amount of speakers up to like 32. I think it's 32.
I think that's what Chuck said from before. Yeah.
So since I've hooked up the wide channels and I hooked up a center back channel, when you upmix movies, no, that's in DTS. Actually, you can, whatever you're listening to, it doesn't have to be DTS. It can be like Dolby, like 7 channel 7.1 or 5.1. You can upmix it with the DTS-X neural upmixer, which will expand it out to all the channels that you have connected. I think Neural X was locked at 11 channels. I think Dolby Surround is locked at 11 channels as well, like just your height channels and your lower bed channels, minus the wides. I think Dolby Surround doesn't do wides.
So it's just it does 7.2 or something.
I think it just doesn't do wides, but I think it does surround back because I have used it with that. The only thing that upmixes to everything all the time is DTS-X or Neural X rather. So I believe DTS-X Pro is 32 channels. Without the Pro is 11 channels. Right
on. So I think that most enthusiast level folks are going to fall somewhere in between that 11 and 32. So DTS-X Pro is where they're going to want to be at to cover everything. So if you're doing like 9.1.6, that's 15. So you're going to need the extra action to really get it going.
Yeah. Is it more immersive than Aura 3D? I mean, they're a little bit different. Like I think I find Aura 3D is a little bit more aggressive than DTS-X. But then I find DTS-X is a little bit more aggressive than Dolby Surround. I've always found Dolby Surround to be more natural sounding. But then when DTS-X Pro came around, kind of teetering between Dolby Surround and DTS-X Pro. But that's my take and my setup. And your setup might be different. Right on.
So here's one for you. What do you consider mid-range? He's gonna be like altitude 16.
Nah, mid-range is like
all storm audio, altitude 16.
I would say anything like that's under like $2,000 is like mid-range. Like a 6700.
Like entry level is under $2,000. I mean, like mid-range goes up to like $5,000.
You think so? I think $5,000 is like high end. Like on the higher end.
I think it's like high end mid-range. I think $5,000 is like the price point where you start flipping over into.
I think anything from like $200 to like $2,000 is
mid range.
it's kind of like entry level, and then
Oh,
you hit
I agree with that.
Yeah, and then you hit $2,000, you're kind of like mid range, and then you start hitting maybe like 10 grand. Then you're kind of like you're getting in the higher end.
Right on. Yeah, I would go 0 to 2 grand is low, 2 to 5, 6, something like that. And so we're pretty much right on together, except
Yeah.
maybe where that crossover into the high end kind of flops in. And I
Yeah.
was like, thinking like an Acurus Muse would be like the gateway into high end, and that'd be like super, super high mid range and low.
What's the Muse? You have the Muse, right?
Yeah, they're like 5,500.
Okay. Yeah. So
Plus,
you're like
plus 1,000 or whatever if you want the room correction, which you need.
Yeah. So I guess that's like, I mean, it's kind of like upper mid range for sure.
That's where I put it at, upper mid range, low top end. It's like the gateway drug into the the big boy kind of stuff.
Like I think I'm like a middle class person, so yeah, I think I'm like a middle class person.
Oh, I when I look at you, I think classy, high end.
Oh, I mean not.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. It's gotta have the classy high end Sean
No,
here.
Let's we'll keep it on AV. Hold on.
Okay, let's bring it back.
I watched Free Guy today.
Oh, that's cool. How was it?
I'm gonna say probably in the 9s for audio for sure. Definitely.
Really?
Like a legit audio mix. So I know you got the K-Scape. Buy it. It's $25.
Yeah.
Worth the purchase for sure. Definitely. It's a little dark though. It's a little bit dark. A little
just
bit dim.
Visually dark, or is it like
you know how some HDR is dim? You know, some HDR is bright, some HDR is dim. HDR on the dimmer echelon of 4K transfers, HDR transfers. But still, man, it's just a knockout. I watched the Blu-ray first. And the 4K next. I was just like, wow, the audio is like so much better than the 7.1 mix. Just way better.
Wow. That's probably that Trinnov working for you.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know that I'd be able to hear it on my system.
You got the Muse. I hear. Listen, I've been trying to.
Muse sounds
what's
good.
her name? What's that lady's name? Claire.
Deirdre.
Claire and Deirdre. It's the same thing, right?
Claire. All right, Deirdre. Just remember, he called you Claire.
I've been hitting her up. I don't know how many times. Always like, we're so sold out. We're sold out. I'm like, are you really sold out on the
They
Muse?
are really sold out. They move all the product that they get. It is ridiculous.
I was like, imagine how many more you would sell if you sent me one. I mean, come on. What's
they're
the
all like,
there?
We can't sell anymore. We've maxed it out. No, it's a really good product. It competes with. I would say that the what is it? The Act 4 is competing kind of with the Altitude 16.
Did you get the calibration mics?
I don't own a set, but I've got a buddy here in town that has a set.
So it exists.
It does exist. You can use it. It's kind of convoluted because how it works is they have a little external computer that does all the processing, and then you have to kind of plug it in, and then it transfers all the stuff over. So it's not like Ragu is in there. It's kind of an external thing, but it works really well. It tunes really well. I'm very happy with the way it works. It would be cooler if it was all integrated in though.
Yeah, it sounds like the Emotiva stuff.
I am like Emotiva not familiar at all. I've never used Emotiva in my entire life a single time.
I mean, it's Dirac, but they have a Raspberry Pi as an external computational device.
Just like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I mean, dude, I've been dying to try that out. I want to hear it.
Yeah,
I'm sure it sounds really good.
It does, and the challenge in the past for them was just they didn't have that tool available, so it made it a lot more difficult for anyone other than someone buying pro services to set it up and have it sound really good.
So how are you calibrating it now? Like, how does it just levels and distances and?
It does levels, distances, it does EQ, it does bass management, all that stuff. And okay, I would compare it to an Altitude 16 or 32 and tell you what I think about the differences, but I can't.
I mean, I don't know. All right, so is it on par with
if we come together? We can do a comparison.
Is it like a like an 8500 Denon or Marantz?
I would say
Something around it?
it's like it's probably the same level of quality as like a Dirac kind of system. Pretty,
Oh,
it's
okay.
good. It's really good. It's
I
really
mean,
good.
without the correction. I'm saying like without the correction.
Oh, without the correction?
Yeah.
Without the correction, no. I think it sounds better than any of the Denon or Marantz gear. Just out of the
Oh,
box, I think it sounds better.
okay. Shots
Yeah.
fired for all you guys in the chat.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It sounds really good. I mean, I'm a big fan of their gear. And you know, I've used the Muse and the Act 4, and they sound awesome. And I upgraded from a Denon into that equipment, and
Yeah, I
the
remember.
difference was
Yeah.
pretty obvious.
Yeah. See, so you had like a mid-range AVR.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
so there's a difference. You heard a difference.
Absolutely heard a difference.
Or you were
And
you were not persuaded by the dollar amount.
no, because so it's hard to not be biased, and I don't pretend to not be biased because it's really difficult to not be biased. The
Yeah.
dollar amount, you know, it's rolling around in your head, and you want things to be better just because they're more expensive.
Yeah.
But I brought people in that have no concept of the equipment. So I did the upgrade and I swapped everything out, and I brought my wife and kids in to watch a movie, and they didn't know I'd made a change. And I can't remember what the movie was anymore. This was, you know, a while back, but you know, the response from them was like, "Dad, what happened?" I'm like, "What?" They're like, "It sounds so good now."
Huh.
Right. So they were able to tell
Yeah.
a difference, and not know that something had changed, and ask about it. So that is pretty good evidence that there is a difference in the sound, and
Yeah.
it gets away from my biases, because I would like for there to be a difference because it costs so much more, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, I brought my wife in from, I think I had the Integra at the time, and then I went to the Altitude, and I was like, I think we were watching a movie. I was like, "You hear anything different? Does anything sound different?" She's like, "Sound the same to me." I was like,
Damn it.
"Really?" I was like, "Really?" I spent 2 hours trying to calibrate this thing.
Well, one thing my wife does say, kind of outside of the scope of that one, she's, you know, if we watch a movie and she's like, "There's too much bass. There's too much bass. You need to turn subwoofers down. It's too much bass." I'm like, "No, this is awesome. I spend a lot of time, like you said, calibrating. No, this is too much
You
bass."
got are you running all your DIY subs, or did you sell them all?
No, I still have 2. So in the room now, and dude, this stuff changes all the time because I mix in all the stuff that comes in for review, but I've got 2 of the GSG Marty cubes running the Dayton Audio UM1822 subs drivers. I've got a Velodyne Digital Drive Plus 18, and in the front of the room, I've got a Harbottle Audio M18X
Are you keeping
sealed.
it?
What's that?
Are you keeping the hard bottle, right?
Oh yeah, it's good.
Okay.
I like it. And then I've got 2 of the Perlison 15s, the 15S, I think it is, the single driver 15, the smaller one. And those are rocking pretty hard too.
Was that big one with the whale, not the whale, the octopus on it?
Oh, that was a Kraken. So that was I still have the driver for that, but I don't have the box anymore. So the box was the GSG Audio full Marty, or no, Marty, no, the full Marty 21. It was like a size of a refrigerator almost. And it was running the 21-inch Kraken driver from Parts Express or Dane Audio.
Yeah.
So my wife painted the Kraken on it. And the paint job was very polarizing to people.
Yeah, I dug it. I was like, "Oh shit, you got an octopus on this thing, or squid."
And that was a huge. They're like, "Why would you put that in your home theater?" I'm all like, "Why not?"
Speaking of Dayton Audio, did you not review the Stark Audio 15 SW15?
No, Mike did though.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah,
Why did you get it?
I've never had one of their 15s in my house before. So I don't know. I heard that it was pretty good. It's very comparable, maybe a little bit better than the Velodyne Deep Blue 15.
Really, dude?
If you've heard that one.
No, I haven't heard that thing.
But yeah, Mike's got that one too, and he I think that's what he's running right now in his theater, the Stark 15 and the Velodyne Deep Blue 15. And I went over to his house and listened to them for a little bit, but I didn't spend a lot of time with it. And you know, you're getting tactile out of your sofa and stuff across the room, and
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
rock,
know
dude.
measurements or anything, but it
I love
was
it
pretty good
for $900. I think rocks.
Oh, I know, dude.
sure.
You reviewed those, right?
Yeah, I love those things, man.
Yeah.
I probably would have kept it if they sent me 2, but they only sent me 1, so I didn't keep it. But yeah, maybe like one of the best sounding under $1,000 subs, sub $1,000 subs I've heard. And I was getting like I was getting some infrasonic. I got below 10 hertz on that in my space.
What? On a
Might be
15?
different. Might be different for yours, but I hit like 8 hertz or something like that. Yeah,
that's ridiculous. That's cool.
Mhm.
No, maybe I should hit them up and be like, I know you sent one to spare change. You should send me 2.
Hey, listen, you wanted
send me 4, please.
you wanted 2. Let's make him jealous and send me 2.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. Your boy, Mr. Soulsick. What's his name? It used to be Next Best Thing Studios.
Oh,
Jay. He just did a review on the amp, the 4-channel one.
Okay, you got that. Oh, you have the 8-channel one, right?
Yeah, so I'm rolling the 8-channel. Yeah, I've got the 7 and the 8-channel one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but those are kind of different animals. It's the 4-channel is class D, and the 8-channel and the 7-channel are class A, B.
Is that they manufacture that themselves, or is that like a outsourced type of thing?
My understanding is they do it all.
Oh, really?
I've never been to a factory or anything, so who knows for sure. But
I mean,
it's all supposed to be. They're supposed to be pretty vertically integrated, all the way up from putting together their own crossovers and all that kind of stuff.
How those
drivers?
How those speaker sounds?
Dude, they're awesome. They're good. They're real good. I wish you could come out to Colorado and check them out one day. That'd be fun if you ever travel out here.
Yeah, I'm like the worst guy for travel. I'm like, I hate traveling. It's
Really?
the worst. I mean, unless somebody flies me out there first class and I can stretch my legs, then I'll travel. Otherwise, I can't be. When I'm
saying no, just
in economy. When I'm sitting there in economy, I'm like this with like people I don't know.
I can't dude, you got no problem. When I go into economy and I'm all 200 a lot. They see me walking down the aisle. Ding, ding, ding. Everybody's like, no, don't sit in the middle. And then I'm like, excuse me, that's my seat. And they're like, damn it. It's like they lost the lottery.
I mean, I would love to, man. I think I was supposed to go out there. Like, I think Cedia was like, it was over there, right?
Yeah, Cedia was going to be there last year, and they canceled it. I was all super bummed.
Yeah, I was supposed to go there, but then they canceled it, and I was like, oh, it's not going to happen. And I don't even know what CES is that going to happen this year. I don't think so.
I think it's still on. It's like January, February, right?
You think it's going to happen? I don't know.
I would not bet on it happening, but I thought I looked on their website and they still had information out there.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think they canceled this year. Cedia, like a couple weeks prior. Well, no, actually, I think it still went on. Just everybody pulled out.
Yeah, well, I was supposed to go too, and my wife put a stop to that. And it was probably the right thing to do to not go.
Yeah, I guess. I guess so. Hold on. What's your town like? They require masks and all that.
So I live in Douglas County in Colorado, and it's like super red not state. It's a purple state, but the county I live in is super red. So there's freedom.
I just imagine you walking around town with like some fur boots and Coors Light in your hand all the time.
That's where I work at. So I work up in Golden. And that is very much bluer and much more left leaning than, and it also has the Coors factory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
There's a big creek that runs through town, and it's like a big party area, and people come and tube, and there's a university there, the School of Mines. So it's a very college kind of town. It's also at the very edge of the mountains in Colorado. So I always say that Golden is where people go when they want to say they went to the mountains, but they don't really want to go to the mountains.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do that. It's too cold for me.
Yeah, so they're like, we'll just go here.
It sounds cold in that town for me.
It'll be cool. But
it's all good. You got a lot of hi-fi shops there?
No, not a lot. We've got, I don't know, like 3 or 4 in Denver. It's funny because Denver's like in the middle of nowhere relative to the rest of the world, right? So it's like there's this big swath of nothing, and then there's Denver. And if you want to go anywhere else, you have to kind of fly over the mountains or go way out east or something to get to another big city.
You got a Best Buy?
In my town, no.
Yeah,
But
no?
there's several around the Denver metro area.
Oh, so you have to like you got to travel to go to like your
For
local
me to
Best
get
Buy?
to a Best Buy, it's like half hour.
Really? Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. I
So
live in
you're
the
not,
suburbs.
yeah, you're not like in a metropolitan area type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, up in Denver, it's a big city, but I live in Castle Rock, which is one of the reasons we chose to move to Castle Rock was it's kind of
Misery.
close to the tech center, which was where I was working at when we moved to Colorado. But it had more of a kind of a small town feel to it.
Yeah, is that why they named Castle? Wasn't Misery part of like Castle Rock Entertainment or something? The show, the movie.
That I have no idea about. But Castle Rock, there's this big rock that
Yeah,
sits up really
lighthouse.
high,
Is there a
and they
lighthouse?
call it the Castle Rock, and that's where the city name came from.
Hmm, okay.
Like the
Yeah,
city to the
interesting.
north is called Castle Pines.
I'll probably never go there. It just sounds too cold for me.
If you come in the summer, you'll be
That's too cold for
fine.
me.
If you come in the summer, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
And
a lot of
actually, right
skiing there,
now,
right?
what's that?
Oh, hold on. We're like talking about vacation stuff. We need to keep on content corner. Are you going to go see Bond next week?
I will not be going to the theater for Bond.
Really? Have you gone to the theater at all this year?
I have. I was just there for Shang-Chi.
Did you like it?
It was awesome.
You thought it was awesome?
Freaking awesome. Yeah, it was amazing.
Shit. Okay.
I loved it. I'm all in, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that kind of stuff though.
I mean, I liked it from like halfway through. Then I thought I got a little cheesy because I thought they were gonna, find some rudimentary way to get to this maze. Then all of a sudden we get a flying pig, furry pig that's like, and then the fake Mandarin, what was his name, Gary or something like that.
He came back again.
Then he was
That's
just like,
hilarious.
he was like, "Oh, what is this? This is my my flying pig, my furry pig, with no eyes, no eyeballs.
No face.
He can tell us the directions to get to the maze." I was like, "No." I was like, "No, don't do this." I was like, "You were killing the movie up until this point." And then they just went all like flying pig, give him directions in their vehicle.
Well, I mean, they did Deus Ex machine or whatever, just have some external thing come in that solves the problem, as a plot device. I agree. It's not the best way to go. Like, okay, we have this insurmountable problem. Oh, look, here's something that solves it that just came out of the blue. But I don't know. All in all, I still really liked it because, dude, I like the flying dragons and the martial arts. And, dude, I'm a huge fan of Aquafina. I mean, somebody named after water, you gotta love her. Like, I love Aquafina.
Dude, she's like showing up everywhere. I'm like, oh,
and Nora, dude, have you watched the show Nora from the Bronx or Nora from Queens? Nora from Queens.
No, wait,
It's
she has her own.
good.
She has her own TV show.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's
It's
her
super
show?
cheesy.
What is that on? What channel is that on?
It's on something that streams. It's on Comedy Central, but then after it comes on Comedy Central, then they put it on Netflix or something. I forget. It comes up on one of my streaming things.
Okay, yeah, because she just came out of nowhere, and I was just like, oh, I was like, oh, there's an Asian girl that's representing, and then I watched something she was in. I was like, oh, she's like a rapper or something like that.
She was in Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that was
yeah,
good.
that was good.
So to keep it on content, the dude, I can't think of his name, the main actor,
Jeff
the
Bridges.
lead. I'm sorry.
Jeff Bridges.
No, for the dude Shang-Chi. Dude,
not
the old dude, but the young dude. The guy, the buff young Chinese dude that gets the rings at the end. What's his name?
Yeah, the guy from Kim's. Did you watch Kim's Convenience? Did you see that show?
Freaking amazing show.
I love that show. Yeah, I love that show. Yeah.
And they canceled it.
I know. That's your part of the town, right? Snowtown, Canada.
So good.
Yeah, I love that. Man, so upset. Maybe they'll renew it at some point in time.
Maybe.
I mean, I think he's too big now. He's too big now to go back to TV, I think.
I think he would go back.
You think so?
I think he would. What the old dude always say?
Hold on. Is your wife? Yeah. See you. Massage kage. Simulu.
So good, dude.
I binge watched it, I think like last month, and then by myself, and then my wife watched it again at her job, and we were like kind of going back and forth when she came home, and I was like, oh, look at this, you're watching Kim's Convenience all of a sudden. Why? She's like, that's the guy from Shang-Chi. I was like, yeah.
So
She's like,
you know
he's
what's
hot.
funny?
She would be like, I remember when you had a six pack like him. I was like, what are you talking about? You got a six pack still. It's just buried under a layer of fat.
I've got a keg. So one big one pack. I thought my wife would be into that too, and I thought she would think that he looks good. And maybe she just lies to me. I don't think so, but she's all like, "No, he's not that good looking." She's like, "Yeah, he's all buffed out and everything, but he's not my thing."
Oh, you talking about Simu Lu?
I don't know whoever played the
Simu.
older son in Kim's Convenience.
Yes, what was the name of the Kim's Convenience? Oh, Jung.
Jung, yeah, whoever played Jung.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's not a Jung fan.
Guys, watch Kim's Convenience. Underrated show. Like, I don't think they promote it enough on Netflix, but there's like
so good.
6 seasons, 5 seasons, something like that.
I don't know. Well,
I think there was like a big thing where like they gave Shannon a spin-off show. And
I heard that, but I never did it actually happen, or is it gonna happen?
I think it's already happened. I think you have to be in Canada to watch it. And I think everybody was pissed because they was the only white character on the show that got a spin-off show, but nobody Asian did.
Okay, that is pretty sad.
Isn't what's your wife? She's Korean?
No, she's Thai.
Is she really?
Yeah. She's for real. She is.
You speak Thai? Sawadee cup?
Sawadee Kop. Chai, Poo Thai.
Okay.
Poo Thai Dai.
Oh, you can speak
all right.
okay?
You
No.
I was gonna say some off-color stuff because I know all the off-color words. She's Thai, and I can understand conversational Thai. Let's not talk about geopolitics or anything because that's not going to work for me. But my kids, they all understand Thai and speak and everything.
Oh, very, very cool. I didn't know that. I thought your wife was Korean for some reason.
No, she's not. Is your wife Korean?
She's not. She's Peruvian. Yeah, but my mother is.
Right on. So that would mean that you are as well. So that's like Anyang.
I don't know what you just said.
Say hello.
Is that something you just met? Is something you invented yourself?
I think it probably. Well, do you remember the TV show? It's a comedy, and okay, I can't remember the name of it, and I can't remember the name of the actor, so I'm going to lead you through this long trail of breadcrumbs until we get to what the show is, and maybe everybody that's watching can identify this. So it's a comedy, and it's about a family that they were home builders, but the market fell out from underneath them or something, and they lost all their money, and they ended
Home Improvement.
What's that?
Home Improvement.
Nope, not Home Improvement.
Okay.
They ended up living in their one home, and it was like sinking, and Jason Bateman was the only sane one in the family. Anyway, one of the characters in the show was a Korean exchange student that came to live with them, and he didn't speak any English. So when he saw them, he would say "Annyeong," and they'd say, "What's your name?" And he doesn't. And he'd say "Annyeong," and I think that means hello, right?
Was that Bad Words?
Bad Words?
Is that what it's called? Bad Words. Jason Bateman and the Asian kid?
No,
yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, the internet will tell. Jason Bateman comedy.
Oh, Arrested Development. Oh, the TV show. Okay.
Arrested Development. That's
yeah.
Yes.
There was another movie called Bad Words where Jason Bateman was with the spelling bee kid and he was Asian. You never saw that movie?
Okay, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's funny. It's funny though. Watch it if you haven't seen it.
So Matt Buckmaster. I wonder is that really your last name? Because if it is, you must be a hunter if you're the Buckmaster.
Good show. I love Arrested Development.
It's very good.
I am a little indifferent about the Resurrection on Netflix show though, because it was a little weird.
Yeah, it was not as good.
Yeah,
I think it's got a little too weird with me when they chopped the guy's hand off and put a hook on it.
Yeah, it's so stupid, but I guess in the context of the show, it kind of works.
I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. Oh, all right. Anybody else out there have any questions for us before we put a fork in this episode? Because we're a little bit over time. And so Shane, anything you want to tell folks about your channel? Anything coming up? Anything people should be looking out for?
Anything working on my channel? I got a review of a Samsung Ultra short throw projector coming up.
Yeah, and I saw that and I was like, God, another one I'm jealous about.
I got a Yamaha RX 8, I think it is, coming up.
No, that Samsung dude, that's the shit right there.
I got a couple of really popular Xiaomi projectors coming up. That's coming up too. I got a couple of Zapitis coming up. I got a couple of Revons coming up. I just got one Revon, not a couple. I got a bunch of. I got a couple subs from Golden Air coming up.
Techno Daddy just did both of them, didn't he?
Yeah. I think he's got them in. I think he's got them in as well. It's interesting Blu-ray. I don't think they're replacements for the Oppos, but they're nice. They're nice though.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your take on those because there's a lot of controversy these days about them.
Yeah, did you see did you see the pictures where they took the top off?
Yeah. I don't ascribe much to the pictures. You know, the idea is for the guts to get smaller and smaller over time, so that doesn't bother me. And they're not doing like a bunch of analog stuff in there, so
yeah, it's tough when we see stuff like that. It's like, man, that's a tough sell. You know.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
dude,
know.
the Zapitis, they look good, but man, the signature, the reference, whichever the top one is, it's like $2,700 or $3,000.
Yeah, it's like 3Gs. It's I don't know if we're supposed to say that. Is it? Are the prices online yet?
It's out.
It's out. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the signature is $3,000. And I think the mid one is like 15,
something like that. Yeah,
something like that. And then the cheap one is like $1,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge departure. I mean,
you did the Ace one.
Yeah, the Ace, and it's great, right? But the only problem with that is it's just not Dolby Vision, and some folks got to have it, right?
Yeah, this stuff is like for projector people. Well, I mean, the new stuff has Dolby Vision, of course, but you didn't have the regular Zapiti, right?
I don't have a regular Zapiti. I've got a like a base level Zadoo that I did a review on as well, but the only Zapiti I've used was the Ace, so I can't compare.
Yeah, they gave me. Well, I got the regular 4K Pro, and then I have the Ace, which I've had forever. I just never did a review on it because I found it a little tough to like show that it was a very marginal upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like a very fucking tiny. It was
So when people
1%.
ask me about it, my comment is that the Ace is really for the really high end tweaker that they just want to tweak everything and they're just trying to get that last 1% of quality, and it costs a lot to kind of move the pendulum just a little bit.
Yeah, dude, it was like if I had to put a number on it, it was like 1% of an increase. It's very mid, and it's like I had to look at it on the projector. On the TV, I couldn't see nothing. On the projector, it was just like, oh yeah, it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit less noise, maybe a little bit sharper around like edges. I was like, but other than that, I was like, there's no way I can really show that on the screen. So I just kind of kept putting it off. And then they came out with the new stuff, and it was just like, we're gonna discontinue it, so don't bother with it. I felt a little bad, but then I felt bad, but then I felt good because I didn't do it. Because if you would have bought it from my review 2 months later, the better stuff is out. So it's like, I was like, so I'm kind of glad I didn't do it.
Yeah, and it's exciting that the new stuff's coming out because they're kind of catching up and leveling the field with their competitors.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and then and I guess is Dune still a thing?
I mean, I remember it was a thing back when I was like 20, but I don't know if it is now.
Yeah,
I haven't heard anything about them.
The two that I always hear about are the Zapiti and the Zadoo, and Zapiti is French, and I think Zadoo's Chinese.
I think they're using the same chips, the same. I forgot what the name of the chip is, but I know they're using the same chip. I know that.
Sure.
And of course, the build quality is better on the Zapiti.
Well, and the Zapiti has, I think, more proprietary technology in there for like their upscaling and image processing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Zadoo, I think, is just does whatever the chipset does.
Yeah, it did a really good job. When I did the review, it was like the upscale was really good for like 1080p stuff, and I think they have like AKM and DAX or something like that in the better. As you move up, the DAX get a little bit better for audio.
Yeah. I just saw the basic bare bones But I was really happy with just their entry level product. It looked good. It's fine.
Yeah, man, like I had the $200 one, and actually I had all three of them, and they all look really good. They marginally get better as you go up, but that's like, obviously if you have like an altitude or something like that, you probably don't want to have a $200 streamer in your rack. The $1,000 one looks really good and looks nice in the rack, so that probably fits better.
Yeah, I know. I keep looking at my crappy Panasonic 820, and I'm all like, I should
That's
get
still,
a
man, that's still good
9000.
though. That's still good though.
Oh no, it's got
Yeah.
great picture quality, but it looks ugly in the rack. Come on,
You're
you
such
gotta
a
agree it's ugly in the rack.
such a home theater elitist. I get that all the time. You're a home theater elitist, Shane. I was like, what do you want me to say?
Well, it is true that it
Yeah.
looks better. 9000 looks better in the rack.
What can I say? And then of course, as Travis said, oh, hold on, just to keep the record straight here. Kaleidoscape did a video on Travis's home theater a few days ago.
Yeah, it was a really good
And,
job on that video. Whoever did it. It was
Yeah,
good.
whoever did it was really good. It wasn't me. And
Oh, I know it wasn't you.
they said I could repost it. So I reposted it on my channel. I think they got like 200 views on theirs, and I think I got like 14,000 on mine.
Mhm.
So I did it on mine. I posted it on mine, and he had on my other channel, Dynamically Challenge. I started this thing where people would like upload their home theaters to my channel, and I would critique them as we watched them.
Like dude, I didn't even know you're doing that.
Yeah, but normally we just
That's
kind of
cool.
we usually just like shit on the channels. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can curse on your channel now. We usually just really critique him just negatively.
Very negatively critique people.
But he had like the best theater. He's got like the best freaking theater. But he had like one aspect that was like the weakest of the theater. I don't know if you saw that Kaleidoscape video, but his shit is like immaculate. It's like perfect.
Yeah,
It's like super clean. Had the garage and the bikes and all that stuff like that, and everything was like perfect. And then he on the original video, he cut over to the monoprice. He cut over to the monoprice, and I was just like, "Oh my god, we got to get into this because you can't have the perfect theater running on this HTP one."
The HTP one's not bad,
but the man's now got an altitude coming in. So
oh well, yeah, of course.
So,
I mean, a
yeah.
man of his means.
Yeah.
I mean, with that, you need an altitude.
You gonna have a theater that good. Listen, I'm not saying anything negative about the monoprice HTP one, even though my buddy has had it and I've witnessed how bad it was in person.
Does it actually work most of the time or not?
I think 80% of the time it didn't work for him. But there's always some people that have good ones that do work. So
yeah,
can't totally shit on it. I guess Travis had a good one, but then just as track record, we kind of shat on it a little bit. But now he's stepping up to something better. So kudos. He has like the perfect home theater. It's like amazing looking. He's got the Kef in walls. He's got these deep sea subs. Shout out to David.
Oh, is that the Seatons?
No, I forgot what it's called now. Deep sea something or another.
Something like that.
I forgot the name.
Come on, Travis, tell us what they are.
I'm sure they're deep sea something. I hooked them up with the guy. Deep sea sound. It's called Deep Sea Sound.
Oh, yeah. Deep Sea Sound. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So they're basically stereo integrity subs, I do believe, in enclosures.
Oh, right on. Yeah. Now stereo integrity, their 24s are pretty freaking baller.
Yeah. I think he's got some 18s or something. Yeah, man, shit just rocks. Totally jealous. I was totally jealous. Fantastic home theater, man. Really jealous. Amazing sounding, amazing looking home theater. So
that's cool.
But yeah,
if you have Deep Sea Sound Mariana 18s, you have to have a what's the watch? The Submariner.
Oh, the Rolex.
Yeah, the Rolex Submariner. Yeah, one of those.
Yeah. I'm sure he's got one.
Siege Weller or something like that.
I'm sure he's got one. He's got one.
That'd be the one.
But his wife did I guess his wife is like a real estate agent or something like that. So if you guys wanna, I'm sure he'll drop a link in the video comment here. His wife did like a more in-depth like build video on his theater, and it's pretty impressive. It's like 20 minutes long. I think we just did like Kaleidoscape did like the 5-minute kind of overview.
Yeah,
super advertisement,
cinematic, salesy kind of thing. Yeah. You know what he should get?
What was that?
Since he likes this deep sea sound stuff, he should commission me to do like 4 Krakens for him.
His subs are hidden behind the screen. Like you don't even see his subs. So.
Well, whenever he, behind the screen, then you can have the lights come on and you can see the Krakens back there.
The Krakens with
Cool.
Johnny Sparrow, Jack Sparrow. You should put Jack Sparrow on there too.
Oh, dude, that would be so cool. And then when people come into the theater, it could be that that song about Jack Sparrow that was done, that comedy song. You know what I'm talking about? See, my brain doesn't work anymore, so I can't remember the name. It's the comedy guy that was on SNL, and he did all the comedy things, and then he's in the comedy music group. And then
the funny guy in SNL. The funny guy in SNL.
Yeah, there are lots of them. He's also in that cop TV show.
Oh yeah, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, Brooklyn Nine, whatever that dude's name is.
Yeah.
And then so he's in the music, like Lonely Island, I think is the name of the group.
Your content credit is just going straight.
No, Lonely Island. Buddy. You don't know Lonely Island? Okay. Google Lonely. Here we go. Lonely Island.
Adam Sandberg. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, that's him. Jack Sparrow. Yeah. I think maybe that's the name of the song. It's called Jack Sparrow, featuring Michael Bolton. Everybody go listen to that right now by The Lonely Island.
That's okay. That's old. That's an old one.
That's the theme song for my theater.
That's a super old. That's a super old YouTube video. Am I correct?
It is a YouTube video for sure.
Yeah.
It's a song.
It's before he got famous.
No. That's after he did SNL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not that old. It's not that old at all. All right. Let me see if there are any other comments that we need to get in here. Double A says I need to get the, what is that? Rindles? Is that how you say it?
Yeah. I don't know how you have.
You did some Rindles, didn't you?
Yeah, I owned it for a good solid year.
Yeah. And then Stark put Giles' video in the. They did put it up. Mike is up in the house. He loves his 84. It's a good one. I'm not sure what Simulu is.
That's fucking Shang-Chi, dude.
Oh, that's his name. Simon. I thought it was Simon Liu, or maybe I don't know. Maybe that's the Americanized version.
Ah, man. Okay.
I do. Pud Tai Di Mak Lui.
I'm going to are you going to see Carnage this week?
Yeah, I'll go see Carnage.
With you, by yourself, or with the kids?
I don't know at this point. That one's a little. So my 12-year-old, I think he'd be okay. My 10-year-old, maybe not. I don't know, but it's rated R, right?
Is it? I thought it was PG-13. I mean, I could be wrong.
If it's PG-13, then we'll take him. Let's see, Carnage rating. Venom. I don't know. I can't see it.
Venom.
Venom. Let there be carnage. Oh, PG-13. So yeah, maybe.
Oh, all right, yeah. There you go.
The boys can be in for that one. So I plan to see that one in the theater. I plan to see Dune in the theater. Eternals.
I watched that at home.
Oh no, dude, I'm a huge Dune fan.
Really?
I love. Yeah, Frank Herbert. Read all the book. Well, almost all the books. And I'm going to do I'm hoping that Kaleidoscape gets the 4K version of the original Dune. So the Lynch version, so that I can watch that again beforehand. I've got whatever version they have now, but it's not like I think it's just HD.
Yeah, make sure you buy Free Guy too.
Yeah, I'll get that. That's it looks fun, but I don't know. Was it just cheesy though?
Listen, if you want to get good Atmos, that's a movie for Atmos. If you're only buying like enjoyable movies on the Kaleidoscape, like that's what I do. I just buy like shit I'm gonna watch multiple times.
Yeah,
on the
fun
Kaleidoscape.
Stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if I would put it in the Kaleidoscape category. Or if you just want a demo material, like audio demo material, then it goes on the Kaleidoscape.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. When people come over, I just like to push the button and have it run the demo script on Kaleidoscape. It makes it so much easier than trying to.
Yeah, I'd probably put it in the Kaleidoscape category. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Right on. I don't know if my mid-range system would really reproduce that.
Yeah, your speaker goes more than my speakers do. I've seen what you got.
I just need that Trinnov though.
You gotta plug your side speakers in, right?
Are they powered? Plug them in. What do you mean?
Are they like powered? Are they powered?
No.
They're not powered.
All mine are passive.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
no,
thought
I'm
they were
running
tired.
Stark all
Okay.
the way around on the speakers and the amplifiers. I've got a new Seymour Trim 2L screen that's going in.
Okay.
It's I just got finished putting it together. Anybody that watches my Instagram has been able to follow along with me, and it's auto masking, so it's constant image height.
You went with Seymour, or is it acoustically transparent? Did you say?
Yeah, yes, AT.
Yeah. What's the gain on that?
I think it's gain of 1.
Really?
It's either 1 or 1.1.
Oh, interesting.
It's the Enlighter Neo. And so for me, I can't do perf screens because I sit a little too close, so they have to be woven. And the Enlighter fabric is one of the very best for AT when you have to sit a little bit closer.
It's woven. Is it woven?
Oh yeah, it's got to be woven. Yeah, for me.
Yeah,
100%.
You went with,
all the time.
Why did you go with Seymour instead of Stewart?
Well, they hooked me up with a demo screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I like Chris Seymour too.
Yeah.
He's a super awesome dude, and you know, I like to do stuff with people that I know and that I have relationships with, and you know, I know him. He's been on the show before, and you know, the other folks, I don't know anybody there or anything. So you know, that's for me. It's just it's cooler for me to work and do things for folks that I know. So that works out well. And you know, it's pretty baller. You know, I want to get it hooked up so when Kaleidoscape comes on, it'll identify the aspect ratio and everything will just work. And you know, and I'm shooting through a fixed anamorphic lens anyway.
Yeah, you got the good one.
The ISO 3L. Yeah, the baller old school.
There's
Horizontal expansion. None of this vertical compression crap for me. Hell no.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You need a lot of space for those ones, the Panamorph.
Oh, I know, because I mean, you got to have a long throw.
Yeah, super long.
Yeah,
I had one. It was like, I was like, what is going on? So my screen is like a quarter of the size of what it is normally.
Yeah, because it squishes your screen down, and then you have to use the scaler to pull it back up.
Yeah.
As opposed to the ISCO, that one is a horizontal expansion, so it makes your image wider.
Yeah.
And then the scaler pulls out the black bars. So for my room, I've got a little room. I don't have one of these baller $1 million houses that, you know, they've got like a 30 by 20 theater space with a room in the front and a room in the back for stuff. You know, I've just got a little 14.5 by 14.5 room. And, you know, I use the max throw. The projector's just mounted on the ceiling all the way back.
Yeah.
And to be able to project on a wide screen, it'd be very difficult if I didn't have that kind of lens.
Are you going to get a JVC?
I don't know anybody at JVC, dude.
Okay. Well, neither do I, but
I want to, dude. I would love to get a JVC. I would freaking it'd make my eyeballs roll back, you know.
Bro, it's only 25 G's for the new one.
I know. It's only, I could sell my car or a kidney or I don't know. I could, I mean, there's all kind of crazy things I suppose I could do for one of those. I'm still rolling the Optoma UHD 65. You know,
I think I reviewed that one. That's a good.
It's an okay projector. It's a little bit loud. I mean, I guess they're all kind of loud. That's my biggest knock on it, and it's a little bit bandy at times.
Yeah. As the upscale, right? The 4K upscale.
I don't ever upscale anything. I just watch 4K.
I think it's automatically upscaling, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. I just feed it 4K, and it's a faux K.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the bit shift or pixel shift technology, and I don't know. It's okay. It's good. I mean, I don't have anything to compare to. So JVC, if you want to do a comparison, send one over, and I'll set them up side by side and see what looks better.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I reviewed it. It's a good looking projector.
Yeah, it's not bad. I had to Franken mount the ISCO in front of it though.
Every lens I've ever had, I've had to do the same thing.
Yeah, I've got crazy, all kinds of crap hanging from the ceiling. I mean, that thing weighs like 15 or 20 pounds.
I know. I'm jealous. I want one of those lenses.
It's not, dude. I got mine for $500.
What?
Yeah, I've got a buddy. He had like 4 of them
for $500.
Yeah.
Well, does he have another one for $500? I want one.
I don't know. I'll ask him and see. But he worked for one of these big digital screen companies that does like billboard size stuff, and their company bought ISCO or whoever owned them, and you know, they all shut down and stopped production, but they had a whole bunch of them just laying around, and he ended up with like a whole ton of them.
What?
And he just slowly went through them. He runs a double stack 1080p set with 2 of the lenses.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
I was thinking the other night. I was talking about one of the guys on the channel. I was like, because for like IMAX, like in the house, like if you do like 4x3, like Justice League,
Mhm.
double stacking some JVC like NZ8s,
Yeah.
which would do like 4x3, and then let's say we're not watching that anymore. If you're watching like Justice League or like some old TV shows like Seinfeld or something like that, that's in 4x3, you could fill the entire circumference of your wall, ceiling to floor, wall to wall. And then if you're watching 16:9, you can just shut off one, or if you want, you can probably do
Just
two.
run them both if you want to burn the lamp, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's lasers, 20,000 hours.
Is it?
And then,
Okay. Right. Even
yeah,
better.
so that's like, doesn't matter. And then you can do like, you can just mask it off, 16:9, mask it off again for 2.4. So it's
Mhm.
like you're either always taking up ceiling to floor, and you're always going to be taking up wall to wall, either way you go, with max brightness, double stack projectors.
You should do it.
I thought about it.
You should do it. Seriously. Dude, I'd watch that video. I don't watch anybody's videos, and I would watch that video.
I don't watch anybody's videos either. I would
I'm
watch
like
my video too.
I'm like the worst YouTube guy out there as far as that kind of stuff goes. I don't do any like competitive research. I don't look and see what other people are doing. And
I don't watch it because I'm a competitive guy. Like if I watch other people's videos, then I'd be like, "Fuck you guys! Were you doing this?" You're like, "What are you doing?" Okay, so I just skip everybody's video.
yeah, I'm really bad about that kind of stuff. You know, I talked to some of my buddies, and they're like, "Oh, did you see the so and so video? And you see this thing? And blah blah blah. And did you see what Spare Change did?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't see it." Like, what did he do?
It's
Like,
so good.
did he?
I mean, and then
New
sometimes
T-shirt?
it'll show up in when I'm scrolling through watching cat slapping puppy videos. I'm like, what did Giles do? What? What's this? Okay.
You know what's funny is, what I do like to look at though is in the YouTube analytics, it'll show you the other
Yeah.
channels that your people watch,
Yeah.
and I try and watch that to see when new people show up and people rotate out.
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
still in there, and I wonder, do I show up in your list? Am I big enough to show up in anybody's list yet? Because all the normal suspects show up in my list, right? All the people that you would think would be there are there.
Yeah.
But,
you showed up a couple times.
oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
Of course. Yeah.
So thank you, Spare Change viewers, for occasionally coming over and subscribing or not. They don't. Obviously, they don't. Do you know? I'll never get used to this YouTube thing. I don't think, because I don't know how to. I haven't figured out the magic yet, and maybe nobody figures out the magic. But I don't know how to make YouTube like my videos.
I don't even know. I've been at it for 4 years. I don't even know. I think there's only one YouTuber in AV that knows how to work it.
Who, Robinson?
Yeah, he's like the only guy.
He like blew up to like 220 or whatever, 212, like in 2 days.
Fucking doesn't make sense to me, dude. Yeah, that's amazing.
He's got good quality content. I mean, and him and his wife were videographers before. They did weddings and stuff like that, so they had all the know-how.
Yeah, but it's like, does that matter that much though? Like just having a pretty video?
I don't know.
There's like some stuff that he's done that maybe I've done, and I'm like, oh, let's see what after I've done it, I'll go back and watch his. Like, he didn't even mention this or he didn't mention that. Like, why is it so good? People think it's so good. Like, he's missed out several points. I'm like, I don't get it. Could be the hair. I don't know.
Like, and I hope it's not, because if it is, I'm screwed.
No, you need to embrace the Tony Soprano, because I'm looking at your face right now. I'm like, dude, this guy's a fucking small Tony Soprano. He's like mini Tony Soprano over here.
Oh, well, I could just be like Unbox Therapy. That dude doesn't have any hair, but he always wears a hat.
Yeah, nah, but if you just shave, yeah, you be Tony Soprano. I mean, I don't know what your teeth look like, but
my teeth are horrible. Yeah.
You need to watch the fucking Sopranos. Watch that show. You'll like it. I'm sure you'll like it. I'm sure you'll like it.
Didn't they have somebody like called? Oh, I can't even say it on here. They'll probably demonetize me.
Who?
Big something.
Oh yeah.
I can't put
What'd you say? His name is Big Puss. That's his name.
Yeah, Big Puss. There you go. Big Puss.
Yeah.
I could be Big Pun.
Steve Van Zandt, which I do believe is a pretty popular, famous rock guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
Before he went on the show. Yeah.
Right on. Travis Travis says that Seymour is legit
Yeah,
and
well,
that
I know
motorized
that, man.
masking will change my life. Dude, I put the fabric in today and it's all good. It's sitting there. I got to figure out how to actually get power to it. I've got power on the wall behind the screen now, so I'm good there, but I'll probably have to cut a hole out and do an insert so I can put the brick and all that stuff in there. And I think I need to do some in-wall cabling for dry contact to kind of trigger stuff and pull that back to the rack, but I can do that pretty easily. I got to figure that all out.
Interesting.
My life
Video.
will be changed.
Video it. Shoot
Oh,
it.
I am. People will be able to see me on my hands and knees putting this thing together. It's going to be awesome. It's going to go over well in all kinds of genres. This is going to be my breakout video.
You got good stuff.
It'll be my first million view video.
You have good videos on.
How many million view videos do you have?
How many videos do I have?
Yeah, million views. Do you have any million viewers?
I don't know. I've been close with a couple of soundbar videos, but no million though.
Yeah, I've got my biggest is like 300K or something like that.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Tough to get that million. Hit that million number. Need to like start giving away money to get that.
Well, that's what Mr. Beast
pranks
says.
or something. Yeah, start doing some pranks or something like that.
Oh man, that's I'll start crashing up all the home theater equipment after you review it. Just throw it out the window and film it crashing down.
We're just not in the right niche to be getting million views.
No, I've talked with buddies about that, and you're right. It's the cream of the crop in the home theater and hi-fi world. It's like the Andrew Robinsons, and the just over the 200,000 mark. What's Chris at right now? Chris Majestics.
I didn't know. I think if you have
bust
really,
100,
I don't think so. I don't know.
His stuff's pretty good, and I think he's got a good take on projectors and stuff like that quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean those dudes. I don't know who the biggest home theater person is.
I don't think that.
Chana's over 100K. He got his silver play button.
Yeah, I think maybe Audioholics, maybe like that. But then
but Audioholics doesn't count though.
But then even they struggle with the views too. So
yeah, I mean he's in a different kind of business model than what we're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's tough, man. This is a tough niche, really tough.
Yeah. All right, talking about tough. It's almost 10 here. I got to roll. Shane, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure. I'm happy to have you on anytime, whenever you want to slum it over here at the Home Theater Fanatics. Feel free to just reach out. Everybody that's watching, make sure to go to his channel, like and subscribe. I want you guys to give him a big push overnight so that tomorrow he'll come in and be like, extra 1,000 subscribers or something. And I'd be like, that was totally worth it. Legit.
Do it now.
And then all of your, 80,000 now, 70,000, 60, somewhere in there, right? 65,
10,000. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, now you're talking my range. Come over here to Home Theater Fanatics. Links down below. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do it all. Comment, share, dance.
Just do it.
Rap.
Like, share, subscribe.
All that stuff. All right, man. Thanks so much. Take care, dude. See you guys.